So in this lecture, we will be discussing the second half of inventing traditions. In our last lecture, we read the first part of the essay, and in the first part, we discussed certain very important things, including the definition of traditions as given by Eric Hobsbawm, in which he emphasized that traditions are uh, practices which have a journal acceptability and recognition in our society. He defined traditions along these lines, that they are a set of accepted rules. Okay? They have a ritualistic and a symbolic nature. Okay? They function through repetition, and they aim to inculcate certain values and norms of behavior in the subjects of the society. So, the main point of departure was that, according to Hobsbawm, traditions are number one of recent origin. Okay? They are not as old as they claim to be. And secondly, in many cases, they are invented. And third, they have a well defined social function. I will dwell on three or four lines along which we can understand and look at traditions. Number one, traditions are sets of practices, as I said, which have a social function. One, okay, which have a journal acceptance and recognition in the society. This is the first level at which we can understand and approach traditions. Secondly, uh, Hobsbawm tries to link the notion of tradition with historic past. Okay, according to him, traditions regularly appropriate the past. Okay, we can say this in another way, that traditions seek to find their justifications in the past. Okay? There is always a tendency to establish a continuity with a historic past. Okay? So this will we will try to link this with some other ideas that we will take up today. But the main thing is that according to Hobsbawm, number one, traditions are of recent origin. Okay? They are not as old as they claim to be. Okay? But they appropriate the past in order to uh, establish a sense of continuity. Okay? This is also a way of justifying change as natural and not arbitrary. The third level at which we can approach traditions is that traditions, as far as their social role and function is concerned, are linked with the idea of invariance, or some kind of constancy in change. Okay? It is a part of human nature that we always resist the idea that change is sudden, that the change is arbitrary. On the other hand, okay, human societies, in our collective psychology, we are more amenable to the idea that change is something, okay, which occurs according to a system. So, as I was saying, traditions are linked with the idea of invariance. Okay, our social life, particularly in the modern times, is characterized by rapid changes and innovation. So, the one of the important functions of the various traditions that we found operating around us is that traditions posit social change as natural. and as historical and not as arbitrary and sudden. Okay? In simple words, traditions aim to explain change logically. That if uh, society is changing, if the world around us is uh, is undergoing transition, okay, it is happening because of a logic within this change. So this is the one of the main functions of religious, social, political traditions to which we all are subject. Okay. Lastly, at the fourth level, we can look at tradition as a regulatory practice. Traditions have a regulatory function as they generate a fidelity and an allegiance to political institutions. Okay? Important political institutions, whether of the past, like kingship and monarchy, or of contemporary nature, like nations and nationalisms, take the support of traditions in establishing themselves and in establishing their authority. Kingship cannot function in a vacuum in at an abstract level. Traditions are those practices of a concrete nature, okay, which help generate allegiance towards these political institutions. Okay, so as I was saying, at a fourth level, we can say that traditions have a regulatory function as they generate fidelity or allegiance towards important political institutions like kingship in the past and nation and nationalism in the present. This takes us to the next point in this essay. The next point relates to the three different ways in which traditions emerge or come into existence. Uh, this is discussed in uh, the part of this essay, starting with the following lines. Inventing traditions, it is assumed here, is essentially a process of formalization and ritualization characterized by reference to the past, if only by imposing repetition. So you see, he is reiterating the relationship of traditions to ritualization and to repetition and also to a free and very systematic appropriation of the past. However, he says the actual process of creating such ritual and symbolic complexes has not been adequately studied by historians. Most of it is still rather obscure. It is presumably most clearly exemplified where a tradition is deliberately invented and constructed by a single initiator. So, uh, one of the ways in which traditions can emerge or come into existence is when they are invented by a single person, as in the case of Boy Scouts by Baden Powell. Secondly, now this is, he adds here that such traditions are easily traceable, most easily traceable. Then, uh, sometimes they are officially instituted and planned ceremonials, okay, uh, as in the case of Nazi symbolism and Nuremberg party rallies. The second way in which traditions can come into existence is through the very systematically planned actions of social groups and political parties. So traditions can also begin in planned ways through ceremonials instituted by political and social groups in order to propagate their ideologies. So, political and social groups, political parties, okay, may initiate traditions related to the memory of their leaders or in other ways which aim to propagate their ideology. These traditions, Hobsbawm says, can also be easily traced. However, it is most difficult to trace the origin of those traditions which evolve slowly over a long period of time, particularly uh, those traditions which have their beginning, their inception, okay, in the activities of small groups at local levels. Okay. So some traditions originate at local levels. Okay. They are initiated in the actions, in the activities of small groups. Gradually, they may become popular, okay, because of the adherence of larger and larger number of people. So such traditions, Hobsbawm says, are most difficult to trace. Three ways in which traditions come into existence. Now we come to the next but very important part of this essay. On this is this I would say deals with the reappropriation of the past for use in traditions related to nation and nationalism. We all know that during the last 200 or 300 years, the world did not only become more and more industrialized, but the phenomena of nation and nationalism reorganized the political setup of the world. Nation and nationalism became the most accepted forms of social organization. So, while alluding to the rise of industry and the emergence of new traditions in the past 200 or more years, Hobsbawm says first that the more rapid the social change, the more rapid is the emergence of tradition. So, one, so he has already said, we discussed it in the first part, that traditions come into existence first and foremost as a response to social change. The faster the pace of social change, the faster will be the emergence of traditions. And see how he links this with the rise of industry, with the rise of industrialism and nation and nationalism during the last 200 years. So let me quote, however, we should expect it to occur more frequently, that is, invention of traditions. We should expect it to occur more frequently when a rapid transformation of society weakens or destroys the social patterns for which old traditions had been designed. So, when there are changes in the nature of the society, old traditions may become irrelevant, they may become obsolete. At such times, you need new sets of practices with new symbols, okay, and with new energy and power to, you know, to bring about some regimentation in the society. So he says, when a rapid transformation of society weakens or destroys the social patterns for which old traditions had been designed, when society changes, the old traditions lose their meaning or they become relevantly, okay, less important. They have lesser justification in the eyes of the people. Now, it is a time when new traditions are needed in order to support new institutions and new balances of power. So, when the balance of power shifts in the favor of the bourgeois after industrialization, and after the society is reorganized along the lines of nation and nationalism, we need new traditions which are supportive of nation and nationalism. So, this is what we have actually seen as far as the progress of history is concerned during the last 200 years. New traditions, numerous new traditions, which are supportive of nation and nationalism, have come into existence. Most of these traditions exhibit all those characteristics which were there in the earlier traditions. Like they are sets of practices which have a general acceptance and recognition. They have a symbolic and ritualistic function. Okay. But most importantly, they also lay a claim to the to past, particularly the historic past, and claim a continuity. Okay? So, in simple layman's language, we can say that all the nations and nationalisms which have come into existence during the last 200 years, okay, uh, claim to be the outcome of very old histories. And this contributes to their acceptance among the people. This enhances their power and authority. This uh, tendency to present themselves and dress themselves up as having their basis in uh, historic past helps them become more acceptable as institutions, as systems of social organization. So I was reading from this part of the essay. However, we should expect it to occur more frequently when a rapid transformation of society weakens or destroys the social patterns for which old traditions had been designed, producing new ones to which they were not applicable, or when such old traditions and their institutional carriers and promulgators no longer prove, yes, sufficiently adaptable and flexible. And after this, something I was just referring to, such changes have been particularly significant in the past 200 years, and it is therefore reasonable to expect these instant formalizations of new traditions to cluster during this period. So, there is a clustering of traditions, new traditions, during the last 200 years. This, as I have said, is linked with uh, quite, he makes it quite clear here that such changes have been particularly significant during the last 200 years. So these are linked with the changes that have been experienced in the society as a result of industrialization all over the world, and the reorganization of society along the lines of nationalism, the emergence of nation and nationalism as the most powerful ideologies all over the world. Okay. And now we come to a very, very significant point. It seems that the essay is gradually, through its various arguments, trying to arrive at a very important point, which is that the traditions which come into existence during the last 200 years in the aftermath of the rise of industry and nation and nationalism are significant and different in two ways. One, they are less invented traditions and more are traditions which are linked with a reappropriation of the earlier traditions. Adaptation took place for old uses in new conditions and by using old models for new purposes. More interesting from our point of view, I am quoting from the text, more interesting from our point of view is the use of ancient materials to construct invented traditions of a noble type for quite noble purposes. A large store of such materials is accumulated in the past of our society, and an elaborate language of symbolic practices and communication is always available. So, whether it is religion or it is kingship, monarchy, or it is some feudal practices, okay, all these things begin to be used in the service of the traditions supportive of the institutions of nation and nationalism. So there is, as I said, a transformation of religion, of history, reappropriation of religion, of civilizational past, okay, of the traditions of kingship, as in the case of England. Okay, in England, the English nationalism is considered to be a natural extension of the English monarchical history. It is seen in continuation with that. In India, we see our nationalism as a continuation of our civilizational past and as again an extension of our religious belief systems. So he gives us many examples about how, and this is a universal experience, how religions, history, civilizational past, everything came to serve the ideas of nation and nation, how all these institutions underwent transformation. So we had, legal systems earlier in traditional societies, which functioned as custodians of feudal laws, local laws. They are expanded and take the forms of courts, which now act as custodian of national laws. There is a blending of religion and nationalism at various places, and old kings and queens, the history of old kings and queens is again appropriated and uh, and used freely to uh, to you know carry forward the ideas of related to the his ancient roots of nation and nationalism. So, but in the end, he also gives us a small list of some new traditions which are invented. So, uh, he refers to the, yes, let me read uh, from the last sections of this essay. It is also clear that entirely new symbols and devices came into existence as part of national movements and states, such as number one, the national anthem, okay, of which the British in 1740 seems to be the earliest. Two, the national flag, still largely a variation on the French Revolutionary tricolor, evolved between 1790 to 94, or the personification of the nation in symbol or image, either official or unofficial. So, the myths of motherland, fatherland, we also link our nationalism with the idea of Bharat Mata. So, these are some of the new ways in which national traditions take form. Thank you.